this computer. And we're back. This is episode 426 of the Colombia Calling podcast. A lot to talk about today, a lot. My very special guest is Mark Kennedy. He's on the other side of Bogota from me. We are discussing the elections, and as promised, we are discussing the first round of the elections with whiskey in hand. So I have a single malt. I've got Cragganmore, 12 years old, Speyside. And you've got
I've got Jameson. I'm not sure how old it is. It's not very old. It's not nearly as old as yours.
No. Well, there we go. Well, we'll see how these affect us. Cheers. Oh, you've got ice in yours too. The heathens.
I was just about to say that. I'm breaking every rule. I'm just trying to get you as angry as possible.
It's true. I will work.
I know you're a whiskey snob. So
I'm a snob. Full stop. I'm a coffee snob, whiskey snob, whatever. Anyway, well, cheers and welcome back. Good to have you on after so long.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about it. I mean, let's talk about what happened. We're recording on Sunday night, of course, after the election has taken place and the votes are counted. And it's been, well, I don't know if we'd say it was kind of gobsmacking, because you kind of suspected that this was going to happen. We kind of thought these things, but let's just plunge into it. Well, I've got Mark on because, well, he's a journalist. He works for the Latin American Advisor, Inter-American Dialogue. So therefore, he's been working quite a lot on all number of elections around the region. And of course, you're resident here in Colombia, and well, we can sort of we can compare it in part to other elections, and then we can look at it from a particularly Colombian perspective. But let's just give my listeners the overview of what took place today. So we had the first round of the presidential elections. So the run, I mean, it was meant to be Gustavo Petro, left-wing candidate, pulled in 8.5 million votes. That's 40%, 40.3% more or less. In second place, Rodolfo Hernández, the sort of anti-establishment, anti-corruption candidate, former mayor of Medellin, Bucaramanga, got 5.9 million votes, 28%. In third place, so out of the running, it was Federico Hernández. I'm getting him all wrong. Federico Gutiérrez with 5 million votes. That's 23%. And behind him, a long way behind him, Sergio Fajardo with 886,000 votes, 4.2%. So, I mean, let's plunge into this. We expected Gustavo Petro to win. He'd been leading the opinion polls for 4 odd months. It really is, as soon as they started, he'd been leading. But what can we take away from Rodolfo Hernández pulling up into second?
Well, that was completely shocking to me. Like you said, gobsmacking. He had a late surge, and there was much ado about his late surge, but the polls were all over the place. So one poll put him 7 points behind Gutierrez. We call him Fico from now on.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then another one said he was like within the margin of error, but then he got something like so many more votes. He just sort of creamed it, like 7% more.
Yeah.
And so I just thought the whole ado about Hernández was sort of a tempest in a teacup, and it wasn't really going to translate at the polls. And he beat out Fico, and he beat him out handedly. And this is why I never make predictions, at least public predictions anyway, because especially in a country like Colombia, you can't make predictions. People who make public predictions end up being sort of red-faced and having to explain themselves. But I learned really on so that the connection between polling data and the actual presidential poll, they're always completely different, whether it's a presidential election, legislative, or even the plebiscite that we had in 2016, which was radically different.
Radically different, but it's one of those things. Is like, Colombian politics is not for the faint of heart at all. I mean, that's it. And like you said, we had this, let's say, this 2 to 3 week surge from Rodolfo Hernández. Let's just call him Rodolfo from here on in as well, so I don't stumble upon surnames. But so we had this late surge, but I didn't know if it was going to convert into enough votes. I thought, okay, he'll draw in Santander, where he's from, Norte Santander, maybe some other sort of and the other feeling I got was that people would vote for him as a type of voto en blanco, so the blank vote. Okay, let's just throw our vote that way because it's not Fico, which is, supposedly continuity and, allied in ways to the current president, Ivan Duque, and all of these parties and the Uribistas. And it's not Petro because, of course, the stigma and the fear of the left. That's what I thought about it. I didn't think it would convert into him, 5% above, almost 1 million votes above Fico. I did not think that. So I stand corrected. I didn't make any predictions. Here you go there. But I stand corrected anyway, because I thought it would just be Petro Fico. But then as I was reading this morning, the column by Daniel Coronel in Los Danieles, which of course is excellent. Yeah, and he did talk about it, said, this is the sort of sleeping giant of Rodolfo Hernández coming up behind. And he said that, Petro versus Fico in the second round was going to be an easy victory for Petro. And I think we all predicted that. But now it's a complicated situation for Gustavo Petro, this one here between him and Rodolfo Hernández.
Well, yeah, I mean, all bets are off at this point. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to win. I wasn't expecting to win by, 5 full percentage points. And so I was all sort of thinking, how can Fico how can he gain votes enough to beat out Petro in the second round? That's all I've been thinking about. I didn't even entertain the possibility. So I'm sort of, I don't know what to say at this point. But I heard a lot of things, and Fico said in his concession speech that he wants to talk to Rodolfo, and he's going to throw his weight behind Rodolfo. He invoked the Castro Chavista boogeyman, saying that Petro was dangerous for democracy, he was dangerous for liberty, and he was dangerous for the economy. That's the type of thing you would expect him to say. But he sounded a really Uribista in his concession speech, when most of the time, I think, campaigning, he wanted to be sort of Uribista adjacent, not sort of like in lockstep with them, which I think the Uribistas and his camp are going to be sort of pushing to make alliances with Rodolfo. But the sort of conundrum for Rodolfo is, as such a dark horse, such an anti-establishment politician, do you want to make alliances with very establishment candidates, with people very high up, in fact, like at the highest levels of the Colombian ruling class? Would that sort of undercut his message? Would undercutting his message matter to his supporters? It sounds like if you support Rodolfo, you're not one to sort of read through lengthy, sort of verbose political proposals, which Rodolfo, ironically, he doesn't really have one. He doesn't have much of all the other candidates have very weighty documents, these PDFs that you pour over. It takes like a day to read each one, depending on how fast you can read Spanish, which I can read, but not very quickly. So I think in that respect, he can court the ruling class and not lose too much support, and actually give Petro a run for his money.
Yeah. So I don't. Well, if we take, if I go quickly though to Fico's like concession speech, as you said, invoking the bogeyman. It's like, the democracy, the economy. He even got M19 guerrilla in there. Obviously the reference to Petro back in the late 80s, before his demobilization. It got everything in there. I mean, it was clearly, but also, I mean, it showed Fico for who he was totally. This has been an election thus far over yes Petro or no Petro. It's not any policy there. It's being led by emotions, because Fico really did. I mean, despite the weighty PDF, there was no other campaigning on his front. He was just saying, I'm not Petro. And that's what it came out as well in the concession speech. Vote for me because I'm not Petro. And it wasn't enough to convince that he should be the runner-up. In fact, it was enough to show that he wouldn't win, and therefore the voters turned on him. I think this, as you said, and then we move on to Rodolfo. And you say, well, you know, there's
who
no.
gave it, if I could sort of jump in there, who gave his speech from his kitchen table in his home.
In his yellow polo neck.
I can't think of anything that just like touches the hearts of the salt of the earth Colombian voter more than that. I was like, oh, I felt like if I could vote, I would vote for him strictly because he gave his speech from his kitchen table.
Well, that's it, isn't it? He's got
every man. He's an everyman.
Yeah, the blunt way of delivering his message. He does it on social media. Therefore, he's appealing to people outside of the cities, you know, rural people, because he's not, you know, flowery talks and again, heavy PDFs. He's got one message: I'm anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and that, you know, it rings the right bells with too many people. And then yes, this speech from his kitchen table on his finca in his yellow polo shirt. I mean, it was quite something, with bad connection. I mean, that was the other thing.
But I mean, that played to his favor. I mean, I think you couldn't have, no political advisor in any city would have advised that, but I think it was a stroke of genius.
But he's been advised very well, hasn't he? Because he's avoided televised debates. He will, I'm sure he will. I
thought that would hurt him as well. Yeah. The fact that he wasn't on the debate was it Friday?
Yeah. I thought it would hurt him.
That would hurt him.
But clearly, you know, I think he might have been finished off by Petro in that circumstance.
That's what everyone was saying.
Will he go to a debate now? I doubt it. I doubt he'll go to a debate now. I mean, what? Because let's talk. You know, Petro will easily try and steer a conversation towards who's your minister of the, you know, who's going to be your finance minister and who's going to be your minister of defense. He doesn't have these names, or does he? I mean, what do we think?
I think I remember the sort of you better drink up because I'm like a few sips ahead of you and I don't want to be slurring my words.
I started on wine earlier today, so.
Oh, I haven't had a drop since we started this, so I might have the advantage of coherent thought and speech. I think he'll take a page out of the Trump playbook. We can talk more about that, but Trump didn't really have those names in the run-up to 2016. He just said, I'm going to surround myself with the best people. And, you know, that's to be decided. And you don't need to know that right now. But rest assured, the best people that I can find will be the best and most powerful sort of cabinet ministers. He'll just say, you know, I'm going to think about that, get back to you, but don't you worry.
Oh, yeah, they'll be the best of the best and the greatest of the greatest because they're the greatest and the best. Yeah, I remember that. And, well, he could do that at the same time, but I mean, okay. So, Rodolfo, that's what we think. What about? I mean, I was thinking about this earlier today. Is that it's not? I mean, I think that Fico's main voting bloc, the 5 million, will shift seamlessly to Rodolfo because they don't want the left wing. That's it. So that puts him at 10.9 million, let's say, without any others. But Fico's going to want some return on this. You know, it's like, I'm going to want something. Now, Rodolfo, as you said, you know, sets him up as the anti-establishment candidate. He sets himself up as that. Fico is establishment. Well, in the eyes of so many, of course, because he's a continuation of the Uribismo, Duquismo, whatever else. Rodolfo is... at the very least, he's unpredictable. Could we think that he could? Yeah. Do we think he will turn around and say, "Well, no"? He could, couldn't he? And I don't think that would alienate the 5 million voters either.
Yeah, this is another sort of parallel I reluctantly draw with Trump and his campaigning. He actually said I could go on to like, I don't know what it was, like Fifth Avenue in New York and shoot someone dead. It wouldn't affect my poll numbers. And he was right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he campaigned on, I'm anti-establishment. I'm a dark horse. I'm here to fight corruption in any way, shape, and form. I find it, you know, advanced Colombia. Corruption is a very big problem. It does need to be fought against, and that message resonated. Yeah. But by aligning with many people who have had ties to people with corruption, being corrupted themselves, on trial, have current cases open against them. Will that affect? No, because I think he can sort of sell out in a way and align himself with much of the establishment, much of the Uribismo and the sort of camp, Uribismo adjacent, let's say. And I don't think that he'll lose support. I don't think people will see that as a betrayal.
I also think
because he is not Petro, and it's like the choice is either to vote for him, under this bigger sort of tent he's pitching, or to stay at home, because the people who, it's either a vote against Petro or to stay at home. So I don't think I think he's in this advantageous position where he can make these broad coalitions. He can get Uribista machinery behind him, and this won't hurt his support base. Let's say the 5 million votes. I think people might feel, oh, he's aligning with these people who I perceived as corrupt, so I'm not going to vote for him. No, I'm going to vote for him anyway because I don't want Petro to become president.
Yeah.
So I think that he has that to his advantage, and he, like you said, he can avoid or say no or make excuses for not going to presidential debates. I don't think Petro is as good a speaker as a lot of people give him credit for. I think he is intelligent, but his speech today, there's just long pauses. He didn't seem really prepared. He seemed like just speaking by the seat of his pants. He didn't seem to have anything written. He gives these long pauses in between, and I don't think that Petro would spank him in a televised debate. So, but is it in Rodolfo's interest to attend any debate, which I think there should be? I think it should be sort of almost mandatory.
Yeah, I think he should be obliged. I just don't think he'll do it. I'm happy to stand corrected. I'm happy to stand corrected on these things. So I like you said, there's that uneasy relationship with the conservative of right of center and right with Rodolfo. It's winning at any cost. You make us uneasy, but we'll be in power. So that's a Trump Republican relationship as well. Yeah. And of course, Trump talked also about draining the swamp. I mean, I guess it's the same kind of dialogue, but Trump talked a whole lot more than Rodolfo does. Let's just say that, and had rallies and so on. But it's a fascinating situation. It's 3 long weeks, and in truth, if Rodolfo just shut himself away and continued to use TikTok, he'd probably just win effortlessly. I wonder if he actually comes.
But like, can you win?
Well, that's how he got the votes.
Election strictly by posting TikTok videos.
He seems to have got this far on TikTok. He doesn't go to debates. He doesn't really campaign. He's on social media. That's how he's been appealing. It's one of these really. He's turned it upside down in Colombia. I mean, I don't know. Is he?
Yes.
Oh God, I don't know. I in that sense, he's like the grandfatherly version of El Salvador's Bukele. It's like he's a social media savvy guy. Yeah. But let's talk about let's move on from that, because Rodolfo we can come to. And what I'm seeing and what we see, the 2 candidates who got through are the 2 candidates claiming to offer change in Colombia. So therefore, we know that change is desired. Well, we knew that in 2019 with the demonstrations. We knew that in 2021 with the demonstrations. The current ruling party of the Centro Democrático under President Ivan Duque were unable or unaware or unwilling to understand that as of 2016 and the signing of a peace accord with the FARC guerrillas, Colombia underwent a psychological transition, that no longer are we looking at the FARC guerrillas as the combined evil enemy of everyone that will group us together and will vote en masse against this. It lifted the veil on the reality in Colombia. People are going hungry. Inflation is at 10%. 20% of young people are unemployed. I mean, this is what the realities that we're living in. The massacres.
Something like 40% of the labor force works in the informal sector.
Yeah, I mean,
empanadas on the street selling, like cigarettes and chewing gum as a way to support them, and sort of support themselves and their families. 40%.
Yeah, so you've got this, and it's a reality. And the current party, again, as I said, all of those different ways, it just did not see it, and that's also translated into Fico's campaign, because he tried to come across as tough on law and order. But again, the veil is lifted. There's a lot more to this country than the long-running civil conflict. So we look at we've got these two candidates offering change. So I guess at the end of it is, which change will be chosen? And Petro has talked about the whole change in the social and economic model, and his descriptions are somewhat nebulous. And Rodolfo talks about corruption and
what else does he really talk about?
He's got 3 weeks to learn what his policies are, I think, and
3 weeks to communicate that effectively to us, and the Colombian people.
And also, can we remind ourselves, because Petro now, what's he need to do? He needs to gather the troops and say, listen, we hit our threshold of just under 41%, which he kind of has to be disappointed with. After so long leading, you'd think you'd have a final push. We don't expect, because historically speaking, no one's ever won in the first round. So you don't expect that to happen, but you expect him to come in with a stronger, he won. It's important. He won. But where are these votes going to come from? It's not a given that the Fajardo votes of 886,000 will go straight to Petro. And that's not enough anyway. How many will skip out on Rodolfo in this final round because they said, oh, it was a voto en blanco? Not too many, I suspect. I don't know. No. Again, it's a tough one. So this is definitely a bittersweet victory for Petro. So that might have translated into his speech this evening, and he is at a major disadvantage. So how does he convert his social and economic model change? We're changing Colombia. How does he convert that into something to make Colombians say, hang on a second, this guy knows what he's talking about? I mean, I don't, I again have more questions than answers. Well, maybe you could jump in.
I wish I had more answers than you did, but getting down to the straight numbers, which you did, you sort of double the Fajardo camp. That gets him 10 million votes. Courting Fajardo vote by Petro, and there's no guarantee that a large percentage of the Fajardo camp won't go with Rodolfo themselves. That's a coin toss, in my opinion. So where do those votes come from? Do they court parties they once sort of slammed and criticized? Do they court the liberals? Do they court the Partido de la U? I'm not sure where those votes are coming from. I'm not sure that 5 million people, let's call that Rodolfo's support base, will get out and vote the second time around. I was surprised that I did a quick number crunch before this, and I found out something like 39 million Colombians were eligible to vote. That's the whiskey speaking now.
That's all right.
And something like 21 million voted, and it was something like 53%. And I thought it'd be lower than that because this is a bank holiday weekend, and Colombians, being who they are, like to go to the beach. They like to piss off to their finca, regardless of the election. But I thought it would be under 50% for sure. It was 53% of people turned out to vote. That's despite a lot of places being flooded. It was sort of showing what the military was doing. Is a bit of propaganda piece, but there were sort of militaries in the countryside in flooded places actually, sort of like helping people walk through sort of knee-deep water to get to the polling stations. Things like that.
I saw the Twitter of the military sort of leading a donkey up a muddy road with the ballot boxes.
Of course, yeah.
That's just a condemnation of Colombia's infrastructure, surely. It's just
no, it's like that's just the heroism of our heroes.
But that's like, we talk about it. You said the 21 million voted out of 39 possible, and I think that's higher than usual, but it's still not high. So
it's higher than 2018, I believe, and it's much higher than the legislative elections. That's for sure.
So Petro somehow needs to, let's get more people to vote. Let's get more people out to vote. I think that's his only option. How does he do that?
Well, he's got to moderate his message. And I think if you look at his proposals, they're pretty moderate anyway.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people like to call him a radical leftist, sort of a Chavista in sheep's clothing. I don't think he's any of these things. He's a threat to democracy. He's going to communism, all of these things. And he does speak in sort of in radical terms. He uses a lot of sort of leftist, sort of a lot of like hardcore left-wing terminology in a lot of his discourses. But if you look at his policies really close and just sort of an objective view, it's pretty social democratic at best. Things that you're proposing, we already have in my home country of Canada. It is not considered radical. Things like going on in Sweden, in the Nordic countries, just sort of the welfare state. He pledged not to nationalize any industry. He made a big show of it, where he went into a notaria, and he had this document saying, "I have this letter saying that I pledge and promise not to nationalize and expropriate industry." And I mean, that would make him less leftist than, for sure, Chavez, less leftist than Castillo in Peru. So it's all very social democratic, in my opinion. It's more center left. Strictly talking about his economic policies, he wants to transition away from fossil fuels. If he does it correctly, that's a big F, huge F, in fact. But that's a good thing. We need to do that. If we take climate change seriously, I do believe the science behind that. I think climate change is a big deal, and I think developing countries need to get behind it. So he needs to start moderating his message, and he needs to start to say, look, these are not scary, huge left-wing things that are going to radically alter the economy and society, but it's going to make it better. We have a future. This is the change we're looking for. Is that enough to get a lot of, I don't know if that's enough to get enough moderate voters, Farhadistas, let's call them, to his side. I think at this point, I have a gut feeling, I have nothing to base it on, that Rodolfo has a slight advantage going into June 19th.
No, I feel it. I feel that advantage as we sit here on Sunday evening, and who knows what's coming out tomorrow and what next thing. I know that Rodolfo has a court case coming up. I think there's a hearing in June, and then in July is the actual case, and there's something around corruption and waste disposal contracts in Bucaramanga and stuff. But again, I mean, it's after. I mean, it could be a sitting president who's then facing this. And of course, then you've got the whole Piedad Córdoba issue with the cash coming down from Honduras. She's not really even in his government anymore. I mean, they've distanced themselves, and he answered that question outright to Fico on that debate when Fico came at him. And it was supposed to be one of those suggestions that Fico came at him with knives. He was saying, if she was proven to be guilty, and if this and if that, would you extradite her? And how did Petro respond? Yes. There is no answer better than that. I mean, there was no comeback to that. And
it was supposed to be like the sort of the knockout punch.
Yeah, it really wasn't. It wasn't at all. So you sort of look at this. Okay, they both got sort of these elements, these skeletons in the closet. What's going on? What's going to happen? I don't know. Rodolfo has been brought up on charges, never found guilty numerous times. Numerous times. And okay, is he a Teflon guy? I don't know if it's, I don't know enough about Santanderian politics and Bucaramanga to be able to make decisions on these things. We do know that in the next 3 weeks, the corruption case will come up and it'll become a center point. Also, his slap of an aide, an assistant?
I think it was a city councilman.
So he slapped him. Was it 4 days in jail or something? Was there some sort of suspended sentence?
You are not up on my Bucaramanga local politics. Well, I know he was suspended. I did not know he did jail time.
Yeah, I don't think he actually spent it. But I think at the end of it, that won't alienate anyone. They'll be like, because again, the same people are saying, Well, yeah, the guy deserved it. Probably. I mean,
I was
that's,
going to say that slap probably worked in his favor, and he might end up slapping someone else
I'm sure he probably
before
will.
June 19th.
Yeah, he's
And
not.
I think that would, yeah, he's actually slapping down corruption,
Slapping,
literally and figuratively.
but so I think he does go definitely into it as we speak today, as the front runner, despite being behind in in today's let's say percentage of votes counted and so on. But we just take into account Fico and Fajardo. These go to Rodolfo. I don't see any other way around it than that. And
let's put this in perspective. Think 24 hours. Think this time yesterday. Would you have envisioned that you would be saying that Rodolfo Hernández has the advantage going into the second round? Listen to the words coming out of our mouths.
Yeah, but I did say that over dinner yesterday. I did say if Rodolfo gets into the second round, it's going to make life incredibly difficult for Petro. But there was a caveat there. I still believe that Petro would win. I still believe that there would be a move, perhaps more. But again, now we're in we're in new ground. This is
a different dimension.
In a different dimension. Very nice. So let's put this into Latin America as a whole. You do a lot of reporting on Latin America as a whole. And some of our colleagues in the press are very eager to put in, comparisons, this left swing in Latin America, and then they always make
Big Tie 2.0.
Oh yeah, the reference to Castillo in Peru and Boric in Chile. And I don't see that as, okay, Petro was in the M19 guerrillas and he demobilized, I guess it was in 1990. He spent time in jail, paid time, and then he's been an establishment opposition figure since then, aside from the years that he was mayor of Bogota. I would call him establishment. He's not really like the new left. He's not really like Boric, coming out of student activism into it. He's kind of crusty old left, and then Castillo, before you jump in, we're talking about, for me, Castillo has more in common with Rodolfo Hernández, not politically, but by being complete outsiders. That's all.
Yeah, if you want to make comparisons, I would say, like you said, there is a sort of a new and an old left. When Boric got elected, he was Nicolas Maduro got on Twitter and congratulated him, and he said, Boric's response was very snarky and said, I don't think we're going to be, paraphrasing here, but don't think we're going to be friends or allies when you and your security forces have killed thousands of people extrajudicially. Mm-hmm. So he kind of sort of smacked him down. Petro, although he is sort of the old left, he has been an anti-corruption crusader, quite effectively so. He's done his best work in opposition. Yeah, he was one of the two or three figures who exposed the politi. I'm not going to say it right there. Where they expose paramilitaries connection to a lot of parapolitica. Yeah. I'm losing my Spanish as well as my ability to think coherently.
Well, you have a child, and so you're speaking only English to him. So there you go.
Yeah, and he gets me up at 5 o'clock and saying, "Look, it's light outside." So.
Oh God, yeah, I know that. I know this all too well. This is hence we are recording at night. But that's what
are you doing, Daddy? What are you doing sleeping? It's daytime out. The blinds.
Come on, it's a long weekend. But that point you made over the long weekend, I think it was interesting because I really thought, as you said, that the Colombians were going to go down to their fincas in Anapoima and Apulo and all of these places and not worry about it, but they didn't. They stayed home to vote. I mean, that's it says a lot. Ordinarily, I don't think they would do so. I think they do. As a small business owner with hotels, I am annoyed, of course, that the elections were held over a long weekend because it's ruined entirely the whole long weekend for us because we actually have no reservations because everyone needs to vote. So there you go. But
you have a lot of people from Antioquia, I think it was.
Oh, we do. Yeah,
Yeah, I think they all stayed home to vote for Fico.
I think they did, because that's the only place he won was Antioquia. It was amazing to look at that map actually and see the yellow of Hernández and the sort of darker orange, like a burnt orange of Petro, and there's this sort of pinky hue of just Antioquia for Fico. And I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he's going to strong arm Rodolfo into some sort of agreement? Do you think he's going to try and get into that government in some way? I don't know. You say, listen, my 5 million votes, they do count for something. And also I'm sure as well, I was saying, okay, the corruption case will take front page. Rodolfo's age at 77, a frail 77, I would say as well. His age, the corruption case, the lack of preparation in policies, these are all in his contra. I was also thinking,
I don't know if they're in his contra.
Well, okay, yeah.
I think a lot of people have already made up their minds, and I don't think either not attending a debate or a corruption scandal, which he's going to call a sham. He's going to call it rigged. He'll in fact use it. He'll use this is the political elite trying to smack me down. This isn't real corruption. I'll show you what real corruption looks like. Vote me in. I think he'll use all of these things that are in his that would seemingly be against a reasonable candidate. I think he is a bit slippery in the way that Trump is, and I don't think this will hurt him a whole lot. And like you said, like 24 hours ago, I never you had the sort of wherewithal to sort of picture this scenario. I didn't, so I'm sort of gobsmacked, and I'm at a loss to think how Petro is going to make up the votes, because I don't think that Rodolfo can do anything that will hurt him.
Yeah, and
I think he is a Trump figure in that way, and he can align with people who he has previously criticized as the elite, the corrupt, the people he's against. He can do that cleanly and not lose much or of any support whatsoever, and that puts like Petro in the bind of how does he make up those votes if that camp doesn't pull in 10 million votes. How does the Petro camp make up for the sort of 2 million votes they're short?
And I don't think accusation, Petro will make it as well. With undoubtedly, he'll make the accusation that Rodolfo is now the Uribista candidate. I don't think that will stick.
I don't think it'll stick. I think it'll laugh it off, and I think that I don't think that will hurt if. When Rodolfo denies that he's the Uribista candidate, I don't think that will hurt him as well.
It's
because they would vote. I mean, I think Uribistas right now would vote for Stalin if it meant that Stalin went, center right, represented sort of the right wing. They would vote for Hitler. And speaking of Hitler, there's a really good do you want to take it?
No, go for it. It was the Rodolfo gaffe, wasn't it?
It was a really good gaffe, and I revisited it not too long ago. And he said, and I quote, "I am a follower of the great German thinker Adolf Hitler," unquote, is what Rodolfo Hernández said. Now, I could leave it there, but that would be being disingenuous. I would like to add that he came in a little while after and said that was a lapse in judgment. I mixed up people. Who I meant to say is I'm a great follower of the great German thinker Albert Einstein. So
let's start with Adolf Hitler's Austrian.
He confused Hitler with Einstein. He's not a great follower of either of them. If you were a follower of Albert Einstein, you wouldn't confuse Albert Einstein with Adolf Hitler. And but a lot of people know about that video, but fewer people know about his retraction and an apology and sort of like clarification and that.
Well, once it's said,
will that come into play? Will the Uribistas use that? Will they try to use it? Is it a thin reed? Is it not going to stick? Is it going to be laughed off and turned into just a slew of memes that everyone laughs at and then forgets the next day?
Well, I'm going to use your quote in one of the Twitter feeds. It's like the Uribistas would vote for Stalin, I think. I'm going to use that.
if he represented the center right.
Okay, very good. We'll put that in there.
Because I vote for Stalin wouldn't even vote for communism.
Yeah, exactly.
They would, in that case, they would vote for Petro to, take the Stalin. But
we're getting all sorts of things mixed up here, but that's fine. I just
happens when you do an interview at night with whiskey in hand.
Well, it's a long day watching elections, although I am continually amazed at how fast the results come out here. It never ceases to amaze me that. I guess it's that there are so many voting centers that there's not actually that many votes to count in lots of them. They're just like Corferias being the biggest one or something,
Yeah, I turned it on. I was late to the game. I was like, going to be sat in front of it, sort of live tweeting and commenting, being snarky, taking photos, screenshots, what have you. And I turned on the TV and it's like, it's 80% in. I'm like, what the hell? It's like 3:30 after. Have the polls even closed?
The polls closed at 4. By 5 we knew. I mean, we could call it by 5. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, but they were giving results well before the polls closed.
This happens every time.
I'm sure they're giving caveats, but yeah, it's going to be sad. Like, if you're going to cover it, quote unquote, cover the thing, and you want to be there from the start, you need to just be sat in a chair at 12 o'clock. I won't make that same mistake again.
No, well, in 4 more years. Listen, now let's take this. Yeah, 3 more weeks, and then that one. Let's take Petros' position. Okay, so he's going into the second round, 19th of June, as the underdog. Can you imagine? He loses. What does he do then? What's left for Gustavo Petro after 3 runs at the presidency? I mean, he can't be.
He's in his mid 60s. He's like
66, I think, or 60. Yeah.
I think he represents a movement, and I don't think there's a clear successor in that movement yet. It could be Francia Marquez. She needs a lot of work. She was gaffe prone leading up to in some of the debates and some of her speeches. She contradicted herself in one debate. She talked about the threat of German egg imports in another, which is a complete fabrication. So she's the rising star of the progressive movement. She needs a lot of polishing. She could become a better speaker, in my opinion. Does it split in half? Do people say, you've had your 3 strikes, you're out kind of thing, Petro, or does he go again? Is there a schism in the progressive movement in Colombia saying, let Petro try for a 4th, while younger people say, no, he's done, he's out. Let's get behind the only successor I see, which would be Francia Marquez. Let's get behind her, have a new blood, give her a shot. Really can't say at this point, but I could see it. If I were a betting man, I would say that there would be a schism in the progressive movement, and that would hurt them in the election. And no matter who ran, if they weren't running as a united front, they would lose yet again.
So it's, the left over and over and over and over again is basically we're seeing these self-fulfilling prophecies of the left always splitting up and saying, on the one hand, I think that Petro would say, okay, all right, if he was reasonable, I say, okay, time for me to step down and allow us. And then on the other hand, I think, no, there's just no way, because there was no way he was letting anyone else run this time either. There was no way that fresh blood was going to come through. This was always Petros, that. So I get that feeling. I think I err to that side more. It's like he's almost getting to that sort of almost the Herman Vargas Lleras point of, I deserve to be president now, that kind of feeling.
I should be president, and don't fuck this up for me, Colombia. This is my time.
It's that kind of thing, and I don't know.
And he's not arrogant though. He's an arrogant guy. He succumbs to hubris. He thinks a lot of himself. He's not a humble guy.
No,
in any way, shape, or form.
No.
For that matter, he's not a good manager. He wouldn't be able to, even if he had a majority in Congress, I don't think he would be able to enact his political project, or he couldn't do it effectively, or he would mess it up in some way, because I remember how he governed Bogota, and I'm sure you do as well. He got a lot of votes in Bogota. A lot of people just sort of accustomed to Bogota being Bogota, but he made transportation worse. He made the guard system worse. Now, he was hounded by an overzealous procurador, inspector general, who did sort of boot him out of office now and then. You didn't know if Petro was actually governing the city from one day to the next, depending on, the whims of
Alejandro Ordóñez.
Yeah.
From Santander as well. There you go. He ran for the president, but fortunately
he got crushed, but he was an extremist. He wanted to tear up the peace agreement and go back to war. Like
also, he burnt books, that guy. I mean, he was he was quite fundamentalist in that respect. Well, here's an anecdote. I was at a wedding many years ago where his son-in-law and daughter were at, and I was seated at a nearby table, and I just couldn't stop. She looked just like him, his daughter.
Yikes! Really?
And of course, and our politics are not aligned, at all. I had to actually move a little bit further away. I was like, because they were talking politics, they were talking all about.
And I'm sure the vitriol was.
It was nasty, it was these unkind people. Anyhow, that's a side note there. That whole point, this has hindered obviously Petro, his time as mayor of Bogota. It gave him obviously notoriety and so on, but it's hindered him because he is known to be a poor man manager. He is known to be poor at delegating, and yes, he thinks a lot of himself. So I wonder, could he eat enough humble pie to come out and appeal to further voters? I don't know.
You know what we didn't see that everyone was predicting, and I think you even said that it was a certainty, was the cry of electoral fraud.
Oh yeah.
We didn't see.
I figured that if he won outright, like today, not the 51%, he wouldn't cry fraud. But if he was lower than the 40% always predicted, I think he was going to cry fraud.
I think it's coming.
You think so?
In the next one, when he has a very possible chance of losing, I think he'll cry fraud then. I thought that Fico might bring it up. Because they were waiting on his speech, and it was like any minute now, and then half an hour passed, and I'm sure they didn't know, but I think it was like Fico was taking a long time to say a few words to his campaign central there, and I thought maybe he'd bring it up. He didn't.
I thought so too. With the delay, I thought with the delay he was going to come out.
Is it coming from his camp this time?
Yeah, I thought he was going to, but no. Unfortunately, there was none of that shout. Yes. I still think at some point, like you, there will be a cry of electoral fraud. We've had it once. That reduces the probability, ups the possibility of it happening. I think so, definitely. But as we say, we're in a tangled up time right now. Where we're looking at now the complete outsider, Rodolfo Hernández, going into the second round as of Sunday night. Despite him coming second today, he's going into the second round, I think, as favorite. And I would say that Petro is going in with a great disadvantage. He did learn 4 years ago that the left-wing vote is not enough to carry him through to win the presidency. Therefore, in that loss to President Ivan Duque, he did learn that he needed to moderate somewhat. He brought on Roy Barreras. He brought in Armando Benedetti, people from the U party and I can't remember which other party, and they know how to move the political machinery. I think they are quite responsible for large voting blocks in the Caribbean coast. I think they were able to mobilize machinery for that. So this shows that Petro was able over 4 years to put into play, let's say a bit more of a tactical plan, but he's only got 3 weeks now. I don't know.
before we completely write off Petro,
Yeah,
what we
go
can
for it.
say, because I think that would be premature.
Mhm.
I think what this says is, what this first round election shows is a complete and clear repudiation of establishment
Yeah.
politics and the sort of ongoing political class and their sort of governance. So if we see Rodolfo enthusiastically embracing establishment politicians, Petro has done so, like you just said, and there was a really good article came out called "The Real Politic." It was in Foreign Policy.
Tim Freeman.
Yeah, sort of
William.
pre-doctoral candidate.
Yeah,
Absolute,
no, I had him on the show.
Absolute brilliant piece. Yeah, I need to.
I had him on the show a year ago.
As soon as I read that, he had a new follower on Twitter. Me, because there's such a brilliant telling piece, and he actually did. He had a thread about it, like sort of talking about how he did the interviews, and he got that, and that was absolutely brilliant, as brilliant as the article, I would say. So he's definitely a sort of Colombianista to watch. But if we see Rodolfo, enthusiastically embracing the Uribistas, the sort of center right, the conservatives, does that sort of wane for people who might be on the fence or might be moderate, saying, well, look, he campaigned as an anti-establishment dark horse, and now look at him, breaking bread and clinking glasses with Uribistas, the Conservatives Party, everyone in that sort of camp. Is he really the anti-establishment dark horse that we thought he was? Is he going to tackle corruption when so many people that he's now breaking bread with in that camp have been either accused, convicted, or under investigation for corruption? Will some of the veneer of his outsiderness that has been so appealing to voters, will some of that rub off to Petro's advantage? That's something we need to think about.
I definitely think it's up for debate. I think my feeling, my gut feeling is that Rodolfo has got his message out, the anti-corruption, anti-establishment message. And if we accuse him later on as being, oh, look at you selling out to the establishment to get the presidency, I would say that the large, I would say a majority of his supporters will say, well, that's what he had to do to get in. I mean, I just get that feeling. We've made this Trump analogy so many times, but I just get this feeling. But again, I obviously talking to my wife about this and so on, and she feels firmly that Petro will win in the second round. So, we've discussed this. We were discussing it all afternoon. We discussed it before I got up here, as we put the children to bed and so on. She still feels firmly that Petro will win. So, were there people that didn't come out? Were there enough people that didn't come out to vote for Petro? Can he build up, and beat down some of the apathy towards voting? There's a lot to do in 3 weeks, but it's an exciting time, as always, in Colombia.
Is June 19th another Puente, a bank holiday?
I don't know. I'm going to be in London. I'm going to be in London. But I will report on it.
Yeah, you're going to have a really late night or early morning, or however it works out there.
Late
the
night.
Time difference.
Yeah, it's 6 hours ahead or so. So it will be late, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. So long as the internet connection is fine, I'll just sit there refreshing. Well, I might even go down to some sort of like, Colombian restaurant in Brixton or somewhere and just sit. But they're usually, lots of them in London are run by paisas, so we know what side of the fence they'll sit on.
Oh, so, you're very careful about what you say.
Yeah, the Rincon Paisa in Brixton or in Elephant and Castle. I don't know. I might just watch it at home on the internet. So, but listen, let me take this moment to say thank you for your time this evening. I think we've covered most everything from this. We never really, if anyone was wondering, Ingrid Betancourt actually withdrew from the elections. I think it was yesterday or the day before. She clearly knew something was happening, but still got like 14,000 votes or something like that. So
she threw her weight behind Rodolfo anyway. I guess she pulled out before she get her name off the ballot. But she'll hang around to see if she gets a cabinet post if Rodolfo's elected. If not, she'll fly back to France where she lives, and parachute in 4 years time and run under sort of like 0.0 whatever support she gets. But I don't know why she wastes anyone's time. A lot of trouble respecting someone who doesn't even live in the country they seek to govern.
Mm. Yeah, and I might mention that my friend Emma's dad fancies Ingrid, so there we go. This is a shout out to him. in southern England, he can't understand why she wasn't more popular, but I guess maybe she's the thinking man's Totty in that respect. I don't know, but this is a shout out for him in southern England. That Ingrid, maybe
good sir.
Cheers. Listen, Mark, thank you so much for your time. Busy day, busy week ahead, of course, and 3 weeks of observing what goes on in Colombia. Of course, we're always grateful for our special guests to come on and talk about, Colombia, of course, through the lens of something. This time it's the lens of the first round of the presidential election. So you've been listening to me, Richard McColl, and Mark Kennedy of the Latin American Advisor and the Inter-American Dialogue, talking about the first round of presidential elections with a single malt on hand. So thank you again. Thank you, Mark. You're welcome. Take care. And I think it's time to turn in after a long day. All right.
Absolutely.